Thank you for allowing me to speak to you, and I'm asking you very much to make a big shift of gears, because we're not going to talk about theoretical concepts of Bildung, and we're not going to talk about the other extreme, which is technology. I'm a sociologist, and what sociologists like to do is talk to people and study people and apply things to people. And that's what I'm trying to do here, is to see how this notion of Bildung in education would apply to the people who are educated in our schools as well as to our communities. I'm taking much of what I'm going to talk about from my recent book called Voices of Diversity, which came out in 2009. And in this book, I interviewed 30 people who were from mixed backgrounds. By mixed backgrounds, I mean they were the children of people who were mixed religion, mixed races, or mixed nationalities, some other dimensions also. But that was most of them. I call these people the assimilators. In our society, we have really two kinds of people. People who stick rather closely to their ethnic groups, their nationality groups, their religion, etc. And some people who kind of move between. These people, by definition, move between because they are born between. They're always on the border. It's almost ingrained in their bodies and their personalities that they are two parts. And I was, in the study, I focused on their experiences in the school, which is what will be the main focus here, but also in the family and in the culture as a whole. And their experiences show their, the response of the community to these different background people and the kinds of experiences they had as a result. What are the experiences of these people? All right, these are some of the things I'm going to talk about. What did they say about multiculturalism? How does this relate to the notion of Bildung? Bildung, as I understand it, and before I prepared this, I kind of looked it up to see. My German professor in college would have been appalled because he didn't think I knew very much German. But as I understand it, it means a much broader notion, not just training people, but making people aware of who they are, what their culture is, what their society is, and maybe some ways of improving all of those. And what I'm going to focus mostly on is how educational institutions could help people in schools as well as out to improve our multicultural society. We are, by definition, a multicultural society because we have all these different groups. And so many previous societies have been monocultural. And for instance, in France, they keep telling us that France is French no matter what you say. And I think their veil issue with the Muslims is an example of this. You must be French. Whatever else you are, you got to change and be French. We're not like that. Some people think that's terrible. We shouldn't be multicultural. Personally, I love it. I think this is what, to me, makes America, America. Okay, we're going to talk about the experiences of these ethnic and racial minorities in their educational institutions. We're going to talk about how their teachers and administrators dealt with them. How did they, what was it like for them in school? Yeah, there are ways that teachers and administrators could improve those experiences for those students, and what should the educators' role be in improving not just the students in the school, but our society as a whole, and making it more comfortable for people who are diverse, for different races, for different nationalities, for different religions. That's what we're going to focus on mainly here. All right, when I talk to these people, they were talking, I asked them to talk about their experiences at school. And they were talking about all levels, some of them kindergarten and first grade, some of them grade school and high school, some of them college. And the respondents, believe it or not, were all the way from 18 years old to 70. And they were talking about growing up anywhere from the 1940s to the 1990s. And one of the things that became very clear is that all this idea that people are all of a sudden talking about, oh, bullying and cookers in schools as if it was a new invention. I'm sorry, it is not a new invention. And most of these people were talking about experiencing, enduring a lot of bullying. All right, what were some of the things that they were bullied about? First of all, multicultural children. And I don't just mean these individuals who are multicultural, but multiculturalism in general is not always appreciated in our society. If they and their families were not accepted in the broader community, and they knew it. And they knew it from very young ages. Because they personally were mixed background, they weren't just rejected by the broader community, but often by their own families. They were rejected by both ethnic groups. One side said, you're too much the other side, and then the other side came back and said, they're not at all like us, they're more like you. And so no matter where they went, they were divided between. They constantly had identity problems. Who am I? Who are we? One woman made a point of the fact that we don't ask the question, who am I? She said, I wanted to know who my whole group was, my family. Who are we? How do we fit? And that was very hard for her to come up with an answer to that. As a result, almost all of these people had severe identity problems. If you grow up in an Italian neighborhood, you know you're Italian American because everybody tells you that. But if you grow up in between, you're constantly getting different answers no matter who you talk to. What are some of the problems that occurred in schools? The first problem that I'm going to talk about is the ethnic language issue. Some of these kids, if they're immigrants, come in not knowing any English at all. And they come into school and they're told not only to learn English, but to learn their math and their social studies and their literature and everything else in English, which they don't know the rudiments of as yet. Over the years, we developed rather effective methods of English as a second language courses, and they work pretty well. However, in recent years, we've had a great growth in what's called the English-only movement in the United States. And this again is what I call this community impact on the education of a child. We have to learn English, they have to know English, they have to know English immediately, and we don't want to spend our school dollars on this frill, which it's not, of English as a second language. So a lot of these kids are left behind because imagine trying to go to China or Saudi Arabia and be told you have to learn your math in Chinese or Arabic. The No Child Left Behind, to me, as an educator, is one of the biggest mistakes our society's ever made, because what it did was force schools to raise the school up to a standard. And the easiest way to do that is to move the kids who are close to the border of what they have to get 2 points up, and ignore the kids who are 10 or 15, or as is the case in many of these kids, way below the standards. You have no time or money for them. And so, no child left behind means, in reality, many children left way behind. A few other things I might mention, there's lots of them. Ethnic gender differences. Kids come into our school from these ethnic groups with very different kind of gender rules than occur in American society, which puts these kids way out of sync with the rest of the class. The Muslim girls, for instance, who wear veils, and everybody thinks that's very strange. Girls who are not encouraged to attend school because the community doesn't think that's important for girls, or kids who aren't encouraged to do schoolwork because they have lots of other more important responsibilities. What are some of the other things that happen to these kids? Actually, in the school, they got a lot of discrimination. Regina is a very sad case that I had. She was a Polish refugee after the Second World War. She had grown up in Brazil, and her parents eventually made their way to the Detroit area specifically because of the large Polish community. And they said, at least my child will know Polish and can communicate with the teachers. Guess what? The Polish principal of the Polish school said, you're not really Polish, you're Brazilian. This is a person coming in speaking Portuguese, not Polish. She was rejected from the school. They would not accept her. Mixed people are not accepted. When they filled out questionnaires, as they were constantly doing, like list your ethnic background, one of the things that several of these people complained about was that they were not allowed to tell anyone what they thought they were. I mentioned at the bottom, this happened both in the school as a whole when they pass out questionnaires, every school does this all the time, or in the classroom. And Teresa is the one that I'm quoting here. She was, I say black, she was actually African and Caucasian. Her father was an African, and her mother was Caucasian. And she was quite proud of these, even as a little kid. And she complained that every time she'd get a form back, that they would tell her to put what she was at the top, and she would put mixed or African and Caucasian, and she said every time that happened, she'd get it back crossed out with a big B on it. You don't know who you are. I am telling you who you are. This is not very developmental.